to week 4 of the Whole Life Challenge. This week, players, is all about low back love. I think it's time to give some love to the low back. It's really the #1 musculoskeletal pain complaint that people have in the US. So what we're going to be addressing is the intersection where the respiratory diaphragm meets with 2 major deep torso muscles. One is called the quadratus lumborum, which connects the bottom of the rib cage to the top of your pelvis, along with each and every one of your upper 4 lumbar bones. This quadratus lumborum can be a real nuisance for people. And the other major muscle that's going to be met today is the psoas. And the psoas runs along the anterior lateral portion of your lumbar spine, and it inserts itself on your inner thigh, the lesser trochanter. The quadratus lumborum and the psoas, they actually connect with their fascial tissues. And they also connect with the respiratory diaphragm. The diaphragm crosses over each of those muscles as it attaches or inserts itself into the lumbar spine. So our breathing is implicitly connected to our trunk's uprightness, our trunk's health, as well as our hips' health. So our check-in is another diaphragm vacuum. And we met diaphragm vacuum in week 1. If you need to review that, go back and check it in. This is a version that we do in standing. For the standing diaphragm vacuum, find your posture, align your spine, brain, ribcage, pelvis. Inhale, bring your arms all the way out to the sides, link your thumbs. Exhale, send your arms and shoulders as high up as you can. And at the end of exhale, spread your ribs apart without breathing in. Release your hands. Again, inhaling. Exhale. At the end of exhale, flare your ribs without inhaling. So if you do that correctly, you should feel a tremendous amount of traction, not only within the core, but in the back of the core. And in particular, these connections between the diaphragm and the deep low back and hip flexor muscle that I mentioned. So to work on that, we're going to do a little rollout with the Corgis ball and a couple of moves that will help to integrate these innermost tissues, these implicit mobility tissues. You lay on your right side, and actually I'm going to grab a block. This makes it a little bit more comfortable. Lay on your right side or your left side and bring the Corgis ball into the side of your waist. That just feels like heaven. If you feel like your Corgis ball or whatever inflated ball you're using, or even a rolled up towel or pillow, if you feel like it's too bulky, you can take some of the air out. And here, I just want you to take breaths into the abdomen. Very small, subtle breaths, very big breaths, and then make small, subtle movements as you breathe. Think of this as rocking a baby, creating very, very slow motion wave of pressure that will help to relax and mollify tensions, not only in all of the external abdominal layers, the obliques, transversus abdominis, and to some extent the rectus, but then deep to that, the quadratus lumborum and the psoas, as I mentioned earlier. So slow motion breath. Now, if you have more time, I would stay here for at least 3 minutes. But in the interest of time and fulfilling the little 10-minute video timing on your weekly challenges, I'm going to go up to the rib cage now. So same thing, resting on the rib cage. In the case of the rib cage, you should take your top hand and press into the ribs here so you can feel both sides of the rib cage expanding inside of the Corgis ball. So when we work on our thoracic mobility from the side, this really helps us with rotation as well as with spinal extension. And you need all of that in order to improve your torso strength, your torso mobility, and for a lot of the lift moves that you'll do for deadlifts, overhead press, handstands, one-arm rows, that sort of thing. You need that deep internal stability that actually comes from mobility. We don't have stability if we don't have mobility. Second side. Oh, that feels so good. Same thing, coming over, and ideally you're spending 2 to 3 minutes in each of these positions. And I'm doing just a little bit of extra rush through, but attempting hopefully to give you enough clues so that you can create that internal environment, being a student of your breath and your body, so you can really slow this down. So breathing and rocking almost as if you were on a gigantic waterbed or you're on a lake, and letting the gorgeous ball create motion in the fluids within the gut, and of course all of those fascial tissues and those myofascial tissues. And when they're touched delicately and sensitively, as you are now, their range of motion improves greatly. This is a way of us to unlock that bracing system. Then you come up to the rib cage, head rests, and your hand comes to the rib cage. If you're used to really grinding it out with lacrosse balls or foam rollers, you might be shocked at how little you have to do if you can get yourself into that downregulated state while you're using something subtle like the gorgeous ball or whatever you're using at home. But many times, the more you grind it yourself and pick it yourself, it's a little bit hostile, in my opinion, and it doesn't have to be that way. You can get tremendous results by attuning yourself sensitively to your tissues. So we're breathing into the ribs, making slow motion rocking. And then letting go. Now, by the way, if you lack internal rotation, you can't bring your hand to your ribs, you can always just rest your top arm on top and give it a little extra weight like I'm doing here. Come on out and come up to standing and find yourself at a wall. So this next move is called the boomerang, and it's a pure lateral flexion move. If you're confused about what is lateral flexion, go back to the Align the Spine week. That was week 2. You bring your hand up against the wall, about 1.5 feet, 2 feet away from the wall, and then your top arm comes up and over, fingertips face one another, and you need to move it a little bit closer to get my hands there, and then begin to breathe deeply into the side of your spine without having any rotations. This is pure lateral flexion, trying to exaggerate the stretch really that the gorgeous ball gave you, and tapping into the side of the psoas and the side of that quadratus lumborum. Then push the wall away a little bit, and then try to move the wall up with your top hand. And that will give a deep mobilizing stretch to your scapula as well, which includes the latissimus dorsi and the teres major on the side of the scapula there. And come to the other side, same thing, pushing into the wall, or rather holding your palms up against the wall without any rotation in the spine, breathing into the side of the ribs, and then pushing the wall away from you and attempting to lift the wall up. So it's my right hand now lifting the wall up and improving the movement all the way through. And if you're really into this, you'll feel it tracking all the way through the body to the outside of the ankle. And then finally we have a stability challenge. Our stability challenge now is that we want to be able not just to mobilize, but to unmobilize by stiffening and using those muscles that move to do what they're meant to do, which is to also help stabilize the body. So you come into a plank on your palms or on your forearms if your wrists don't like it. Move your shoulders away from your neck. Move your shoulders away from each other. Activate your buttock muscles. Tighten all of your core tissues. In Yoga Tune-Up we call this the tubular core, and then hold for 1 minute. So this is to try to find your spinal alignment and using the tissues that you were just massaging and coaxing and breathing and pampering with the gorgeous ball and your breathing, but asking them to stabilize. So at this point, your whole body is likely to be shaking. Mine certainly is. This is not just a navel to spine exercise. When you're planking, it should be all of those muscles corseting at once. I think that was about a minute. Felt like it. Then I'll come out, and finally we remobilize from inside out. You stabilize from inside out. Now we're remobilizing from inside out. Inhale, arms come up overhead. Hook your thumbs. Exhale. And feel the innermost abdominals sliding inside of that amazing shell of support that you created with the plank. Well, that's your low back love. Dealing with those innermost abdominals and layering them on top is what's going to give your low back consistency, strength, power, and keep pain at bay. See you next week.